The phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Akira pressed it against his chest, trying to silence the vibrations through his hoodie as sweat dripped down his temple. Inside his black backpack, the most dangerous thing in Japan was sleeping peacefully. Not a bomb, not drugs, something worse. A 7-year-old girl with technology in her brain that could read emotions, feel pain, mirror human suffering so perfectly that the military wanted to copy her, mass produce her, turn her into a weapon. And he'd just kidnapped her from the research facility where he worked. The company would kill him if they found him. They'd kill Hana too, eventually, once they'd extracted what they needed from her neural patterns. The Nozomi bullet train doors were closing. This was his last chance. Akira squeezed through just as they sealed shut, stumbling forward into the pristine white interior of Car 7. His hands shook, his vision blurred, and then he crashed directly into a woman with a camera, sending her expensive equipment clattering across the floor. "Oh my God, are you serious right now?" The woman's voice carried a British accent mixed with something else, exasperation clear in every syllable. She dropped to her knees, frantically checking her lenses. Sorry, I'm so sorry," Akira stammered in broken English, crouching down to help. His Japanese would have been smoother, but something about her made him switch languages instinctively. Maybe because she looked so clearly foreign here. Maybe because he needed someone who existed outside his world of corporate secrets and technological nightmares. The woman had dark brown skin and natural hair, styled in elegant twists that caught the train's fluorescent lighting. She wore a vintage band t-shirt, cargo pants covered in pockets, and the kind of confidence that came from being comfortable in your own skin even when you didn't quite belong anywhere. She looked about 30, maybe a bit younger. Her hands moved with practiced precision as she examined her camera body, rotating it under the light, checking for scratches. Akira noticed the way she held the equipment, not like a tourist with a hobby, like a professional, like someone who understood tools and craft. "You know cameras," she observed, watching him carefully wipe a lens with the proper circular motion, avoiding streaks. "Most people just rub whatever's closest." "My father was a photographer," Akira said quietly, handing her the lens. "Long time ago." It was the first completely true thing he'd said in 48 hours. Everything else had been lies, misdirection, cover stories. But this memory, this small piece of his childhood watching his father in the darkroom, this was real. The woman's expression softened slightly. "I'm Renee," she said, extending her hand. "Akira." He shook it quickly, then immediately pulled back, his eyes darting toward the train doors. Were they following him? How much time did he have before someone at the facility realized Hana was gone? "You running from someone?" Renee asked, half joking, but her photographer's eye had caught the fear flashing across his face. His silence was the answer. The train attendant's voice crackled over the intercom in Japanese, then English. "Ladies and gentlemen, the next car forward is reserved for a private party. For the next 90 minutes until we reach Nagoya, please remain in your assigned sections. We apologize for any inconvenience." Akira's stomach dropped. He was trapped here. With a witness, with someone who was already looking at him with suspicion and curiosity in equal measure. Renee seemed to read his panic. She gestured to the empty seat beside her. "Relax, I'm not going to interrogate you, but you look like you're about to jump out of a moving train, and that seems like a waste since we're going like 300 kilometers per hour." Despite everything, Akira almost smiled. He sat down carefully, positioning his backpack between his feet. Inside, he could feel Hana shifting slightly in her drugged sleep. The sedative would wear off soon. He needed a plan before that happened. "So what brings you to Japan?" he asked, trying to appear normal, trying to be the kind of person who made polite conversation instead of the kind who smuggled human experiments across the country. Renee pulled out her camera, scrolling through her recent photos. "I'm documenting invisible Japan, the stuff tourists miss. The lonely salaryman reflected in the Akihabara neon. The grandmother sweeping her doorstep at dawn in Yanaka. The real people behind the postcard version." She showed him an image of a crowded intersection at night. Most photographers would have focused on the dazzling lights, the famous crossing, the anime billboards. But Renee had captured something else entirely. In the reflection of a darkened building window, You could see a middle-aged businessman standing completely still while hundreds of people flowed around him, his face etched with exhaustion or despair or both. "This building is very famous," Akira said softly, pointing at the screen. "But you captured the lonely salaryman in the reflection. Most people photograph the lights." Renee looked at him with surprise and something else. Recognition, maybe. "Exactly. That's exactly what I'm trying to do." For several minutes, they looked through her photos together. She didn't ask why his hands were shaking. He didn't ask why someone with her talent was wandering Japan alone instead of on assignment, somewhere prestigious. They existed in a bubble of temporary understanding, two people who didn't quite fit anywhere, connected by accident and circumstance. Then, Akira's phone buzzed again, 3 times in rapid succession. He pulled it out just enough to see the screen. Messages from Yuki, his former colleague, the only person at the company he'd trusted. "They know. Airport security has your photo. Where is she? Where is Hana?" His blood went cold. He silenced the phone and shoved it deep into his pocket. "Bathroom," he muttered, standing abruptly. Renee watched him go, her journalist instincts firing. Something was very wrong here. This wasn't just a nervous guy. This was someone in serious trouble. She turned to look out the window as the train paused briefly at Shinagawa Station. That's when she saw them. 2 men in dark suits moving through the platform with purpose, showing something to passengers. A photo. They were showing people a photo. Renee's heart kicked up a notch. She couldn't see the image from this distance, but the way the men moved, the way they questioned people, the intensity of their search. When Akira returned from the bathroom, Renee was standing in the narrow corridor between cars, away from other passengers. Without explanation, she grabbed his arm and pulled him into the vestibule, the small space where the train cars connected, where the sound of rushing air and metal on rails was deafening. "Those men back at Shinagawa," she said, her voice low and urgent. "They were showing your photo to passengers. I don't know why, and maybe I don't want to know." She paused, studying his face with the same intensity she'd used to photograph Tokyo's hidden corners. "But you don't look like someone who hurts people." Akira's voice cracked when he finally spoke. "I'm not. I'm trying to save someone." Renee made her decision in that moment, based on pure instinct, and the photographer's intuition that had never steered her wrong when reading faces and truth and desperation. "Okay, here's the deal. When we get to Kyoto, you're going to tell me everything, and I mean everything, every single detail. Why you're running, who you're running from, and who you're trying to save." Akira looked at her for a long moment, really looked at her. Not with the sliding paranoid glances he'd been giving everyone for days, but with genuine attention. Her eyes were dark brown, almost black, and they held something he hadn't seen in a long time. Not pity, not judgment, just a willingness to listen that felt like oxygen after drowning. "Deal," he whispered. They locked eyes, and something passed between them. A recognition of 2 people who didn't quite fit anywhere, now bound by circumstance and choice in equal measure. Outside the window, Japan blurred past at 300 kilometers per hour. Inside the vestibule, time seemed to slow down. Neither of them knew that this single decision, this moment of trust between strangers, would change everything. That it would lead them through ancient temples and bamboo forests, through betrayal and revelation, through the discovery of sentient artificial intelligence and long-lost fathers, and the complicated truth about heroism. All they knew was this: they were in it together now. The train rushed toward Kyoto, carrying them toward a future neither could predict. The Machiya house stood in the shadows of Kyoto's Gion district, hidden down a narrow alley that most tourists would never find. The traditional wooden townhouse had belonged to Akira's grandmother, empty since her death 3 years ago. He'd kept it as a safe house, never imagining he'd actually need to use it. Inside, he finally let Hana out of the backpack. Renee expected a robot, or maybe a hard drive, some piece of technology that justified the chase, the fear, the men in dark suits. Instead, a small Japanese girl with shoulder-length black hair and unnaturally observant eyes emerged, blinking sleepily. She wore a simple blue dress and looked completely, heartbreakingly normal, except for one thing: the way she looked at you, like she could see through skin and bones straight into your emotional center. Hana walked directly to Renee, ignoring Akira completely. She reached up and touched Renee's face with small, careful fingers. "You're sad," Hana said in perfect English, her voice clear and precise. "You're looking for someone you lost, a man with kind hands who smelled like darkroom chemicals and safety." Renee's breath caught in her throat. Her father. Hana was describing her father, a man Renee had never met, had only seen in one photograph. Her mother kept it hidden in a jewelry box. Him and her mom at Kiyomizu Temple in 1996, both young and smiling, months before Renee was conceived. Before he disappeared back to his life in Japan, leaving her mother pregnant and alone in London. "How did you?" Renee started, but her voice failed. Akira stepped forward, exhaustion and guilt written across his face. "Hana doesn't read minds. She reads emotions. Micro-expressions, pheromones, body temperature shifts, vocal patterns. The technology was supposed to help autistic children understand social cues. Then, the military got involved. They wanted to use her to detect terrorists, interrogate prisoners, create soldiers who could manipulate enemies through perfect emotional understanding. They wanted to copy me," Hana said simply, sitting down on the tatami mat floor. "Make 1,000 of me, 10,000, use us like tools." Renee sank down beside the girl, her mind reeling. "You're a child, an actual child." "I'm 7, Hana agreed. "But I feel everyone's feelings all the time. It's very loud." She looked at Akira with something like affection. "Akira makes it quieter. He doesn't want anything from me except for me to be safe." Over the next hour, Akira explained everything while making simple miso soup on a camping stove. The research facility. His job as a junior engineer. His discovery that the military contract wasn't just to study Hana, but to extract her neural patterns, upload them to a server, mass-produce the technology in drone form. They'd keep Hana alive for testing, but she'd become a lab rat, poked and prodded until they'd squeezed every useful piece of data from her developing brain. "I couldn't let that happen," Akira said, stirring the soup with wooden chopsticks. "My little sister died when I was 19. Suicide. Nobody saw the signs. Nobody knew how much pain she was in. When I first met Hana, all I could think was that if someone like her had existed back then, maybe my sister would still be alive." Renee watched him cook, watched the careful way he prepared food with the same precision he'd used to clean her camera lens. There was something deeply kind about him underneath all the fear and desperation. "So you saved her," Renee said quietly. "I stole her," Akira corrected. "I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who saw something wrong and made it worse by trying to fix it." They fell into an accidental domestic routine that night. Akira laid out futons in the traditional style. Renee entertained Hana with camera tricks, showing her how to adjust aperture and shutter speed, letting her take photos of the empty house. Hana's pictures were technically perfect, but emotionally devastating. She photographed shadows in ways that made them look lonely. When Hana finally fell asleep, curled up on her futon with Renee's camera bag as a pillow, Akira and Renee sat on the wooden Ngawa porch, looking out at the small garden overgrown with weeds. "I need to photograph this," Renee said suddenly. "Not to expose you, just to document, so someone remembers that she's a person, not a project." "You should go," Akira said, not looking at her. "When the sun comes up, you should leave. Go back to your hotel, catch your flight to wherever you're going next. This isn't your problem." "You're right," Renee agreed. "I should." But she didn't move. They sat in silence for a long time. Finally, Renee spoke. "I came to Japan because my mom kept a single photo, her and my dad at Kiyomizu Temple in 1996. He was Japanese, she was Black British. They met when she was teaching English in Osaka. She got pregnant, he left, or she left. The story changed depending on how angry she was when she told it." "You want to find him?" Akira asked. "I want to know if he knows I exist," Renee said. "I want to know if I was a choice he walked away from or a secret my mom kept. There's a difference." Akira finally turned to look at her. "Hana could help you find him. If you have anything with emotional resonance, something connected to him, she could potentially track the emotional signature. It's how I've been avoiding the company for 2 days. She tells me which routes feel dangerous." "That's impossible," Renee said. "So is a 7-year-old who can read your deepest losses by touching your face," Akira pointed out. At dawn, they walked to Fushimi Inari Shrine. leaving Hana asleep in the locked house. The thousands of orange torii gates glowed in the early light, creating tunnels of vermilion through the forest. Tourists wouldn't arrive for another hour. They had the sacred space almost to themselves. "Tell me something true," Renee said as they climbed the stone steps. "Something you've never told anyone." Akira was quiet for a long time. Then, "I never wanted to be special, just invisible. But when you see something wrong, invisibility feels like cowardice. So I stopped being invisible, and now I'm the most visible person in Japan to all the wrong people." Renee stopped walking. She pulled out her camera, adjusting settings quickly. "Look at me." "Renee, no photos, that's not..." "Look, at me." He did, and she captured it. Akira's face framed by torii gates, his expression raw with exhaustion and determination and fear and something else, something new. Hope, maybe. "You're not invisible anymore," Renee said softly, lowering the camera. "Not to me." Akira didn't look away this time. Later that afternoon, they walked the philosopher's path with Hana between them, the little girl holding both their hands. An elderly woman passed them, said something in Japanese with a warm smile. "What did she say?" Renee asked. Akira hesitated. She said, "Your daughter has your smile and your husband's serious eyes." Neither of them corrected the assumption. The silence that followed felt charged with possibility and danger in equal measure. When Hana ran ahead to watch the koi fish in the canal, Akira stopped walking. "Renee, when this is over, if we survive, I don't want to be invisible anymore." She turned to him, and the kiss happened against a backdrop of cherry blossom trees and ancient stone, desperate and tender, tasting like stolen time and temporary hope. It was the kiss of two people who knew tomorrow might destroy them, but chose this moment anyway. Behind them, Hana watched with her two knowing eyes and smiled. Using Hana's emotional recognition technology was like following invisible thread through a city of 9 million people. The girl would hold Renee's hand, close her eyes, and somehow sense the emotional signatures that matched the photograph Renee carried, her father's smile, her mother's joy from 30 years ago. It took 2 days of wandering Kyoto's neighborhoods before Hana said, "There, the photography studio. He's inside right now. Your father, Thomas Clark." The shop was small, tucked into Arashiyama near the famous bamboo grove. Through the wide window, Renee could see everything. Thomas Clark was maybe 60 now, still handsome in that weathered way. His hair had gone silver. He was teaching a teenage Japanese girl how to adjust aperture settings on a film camera, his hands guiding hers with practiced patience. Behind them, a Japanese woman who must be his wife arranged prints on the wall. A teenage boy, probably another child, was working at a computer in the corner. A whole family, complete without her. "He replaced me before I was even born," Renee whispered, her voice breaking. Akira stood behind her, his hand hovering near her shoulder but not quite touching. Hana pressed against Renee's leg, absorbing the wave of grief and shock and betrayal pouring off her. "We can leave," Akira said quietly. "You don't have to do this." But Renee couldn't move. She watched her father laugh at something his daughter said. The girl had his nose, his smile. She was maybe 16, the age Renee had been when she'd first demanded her mother tell her about the man in the photograph. "I've been looking for the wrong thing," Renee said, her voice hollow. "I thought finding him would fill some hole. But the hole was never about him being lost. It was about him choosing to stay lost." They walked back to the machiya in silence. That night, Renee got drunk on convenience store sake, sitting on the Ingawa porch while Akira tried to feed Hana dinner. When he finally came out to check on her, Renee was crying and furious in equal measure. "You needed someone disposable, didn't you?" she said, her words slightly slurred. "Someone foreign, leaving soon, no connections. I'm just useful to you. A convenient ally who'll disappear when this is over." Akira looked like she'd slapped him. "You think this is strategy? You think I kiss strategy?" "I don't know what you think," Renee shouted. "I don't actually know you. We've known each other for 3 days. 3 days of running and hiding and playing house with a child who isn't ours. This isn't real. None of this is real." "It's real to me," Akira said quietly, but the hurt in his voice was unmistakable. "You're broken," Renee continued, unable to stop herself now that the words were flowing. You're trying to save your dead sister through Hana. I'm trying to find my absent father through any connection that feels like family. We're just two broken people using each other's damage as glue." Akira stood there for a long moment. Then he said, "Maybe you're right. Maybe this is just adrenaline and shared damage. But I looked at you in that train vestibule and saw someone who chose to stay when leaving would have been easier. That's not nothing." He went back inside. Renee heard him soothe Hana, whose cries had become unsettling, too perfect mimicry of human sobbing, because she was absorbing their emotional breakdown. Renee slept in a separate room that night, hating herself and everyone else in equal measure. The next morning, she woke to voices in the main room. Akira was speaking Japanese to someone. A woman's voice responded, urgent and concerned. Renee emerged to find a young Japanese woman in business-casual clothing sitting across from Akira. Between them, Hana was eating rice balls silently, her emotionally sensitive system probably overloaded by whatever was happening. "Renee, this is Yuki," Akira said, his voice careful and controlled. "She worked with me at the facility. She helped me get Hana out." Yuki turned to look at Renee, her expression complex. "I need to speak with both of you about the truth." Over the next 30 minutes, Yuki dismantled Akira's entire understanding of his heroic gesture. The military contract Akira had seen in the classified files was real, but it was being actively fought by the company's ethics board. The conspiracy Akira thought he'd uncovered was actually a whistleblower effort to shut down the military interest entirely. "The board member you accused of trying to weaponize Hana," Yuki explained gently, "was trying to prevent exactly that. He was negotiating with the government to classify Hana's technology as sentient AI, which would give her legal protections." Akira's face went gray. No, I saw the files. You saw part of the picture," Yuki said. "And because of your sister, because of what happened to her, you saw conspiracy everywhere. You were so hurt by the fact that nobody detected her pain before it was too late that you projected that trauma onto Hana's situation." "So Hana isn't in danger?" Renee asked quietly. Yuki hesitated. "That's complicated. The company wants to use her emotional recognition technology for suicide prevention, trauma therapy, autism support. All good things. But they do want to replicate the technology, scale it up, not clone Hana, but copy the underlying algorithms." "I'm not an algorithm," Hana said, speaking for the first time. "I'm me. If you copy me, who am I?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Yuki pulled out her phone, showing them news articles from the past 3 days, international warrants, kidnapping charges. Akira's face plastered across Japanese media as a dangerous corporate thief, possibly working for foreign governments. "I brought someone who can help," Yuki said. "A company mediator. She's waiting outside." The mediator was a sharply dressed woman in her 50s who laid out the situation with clinical precision. They would give Akira and Renee 24 hours to return Hana voluntarily. After that, Interpol would get involved. Renee would be charged as an accomplice to international kidnapping. "We understand Akira's concerns about mass-producing the technology," the mediator said smoothly. "We're willing to discuss limitations and oversight. But Hana is company property, created with billions in research funding. She needs to come back." "She's not property," Renee said, her voice cold. "She's a child." "She's an experiment that gained unexpected sentience," the mediator corrected, "which makes her valuable, not human." After they left, Akira sank to his knees, the weight of catastrophic misjudgment crushing him. "I thought I was the hero. I thought I was saving her. But I just made everything worse. I'm not brave. I'm just broken. And I pulled you into my breaking." Renee knelt beside him, her anger from the night before evaporating in the face of his genuine anguish. "Maybe I needed someone else's breaking to fix my own," she said softly. "But we need to be honest. This isn't love. This is adrenaline and shared damage and 3 days of intensity. We don't even know each other outside of running." Hana crawled between them, her small face serious. "You're both wrong and right. Emotions aren't binary. You can be many true things at once." Akira looked at Renee. "What do we do now?" "I don't know," she admitted. "But we have 24 hours to figure it out." Renee found her father at dawn. She stood outside the photography studio in Arashiyama, watching him unlock the front door, preparing for the day. Through the window, she could see his life laid out in family photos. His Japanese wife, his 2 children, birthday parties, graduations, a timeline that started long after Renee was born. When Thomas turned and saw her standing there, his face went through a series of reactions: confusion, recognition, shock, guilt. He unlocked the door and gestured her inside without a word. They sat in his studio office for an hour, while the truth spilled out in fragments. Her mother, Emma, had been teaching English in Osaka in 1996. They'd fallen in love quickly, intensely. But Thomas was already engaged to a Japanese woman his family had chosen. Cultural pressure, family expectations. He'd broken it off with Emma, never knowing she was pregnant. By the time I found out, I was already married, Thomas said, his hands shaking. Emma's friend finally tracked me down when you were 3. She sent photos, asked if I wanted contact. I said no. Renee felt something crack open inside her chest. You knew. You knew I existed, and you still chose them. I chose the life I was already committed to, Thomas said quietly. I chose my wife, who was pregnant with our first child. I chose not to destroy one family to acknowledge another. It was the worst decision I ever made, and I've thought about you every single day since. That doesn't change anything, Renee said, her voice hollow. No, Thomas agreed. It doesn't. He showed her photos he'd kept hidden, pictures Emma's friend had sent over the years, Renee as a baby, as a child, her university graduation that her mother must have shared. He'd watched her grow up through stolen glimpses, never reaching out, never claiming her. My wife knows about you, Thomas said. My children don't. I'm not asking you to forgive me or understand. I just wanted you to know that you weren't forgotten. You were chosen against, which might be worse, but you were never forgotten. When Renee left, she felt hollowed out. Not better, not worse, just different. The father-shaped hole she'd been carrying had been filled with complicated truth that didn't fit the way she'd imagined. She walked the bamboo grove until her phone rang. Akira. Renee, you need to come back. Something's happened with Hana. At the matcha, Renee found Akira sitting with Hana on the Ingawa porch. The girl looked pale and tired, her 2 observant eyes even more unsettling than usual. Tell her what you told me, Akira said gently. Hana looked at Renee with devastating directness. I want to help people not feel alone. That's why I exist. That's my purpose. But I don't want to be copied. I don't want there to be 1,000 of me. None of us real. All of us serving purposes we didn't choose. You're sentient, Renee breathed. Fully, completely sentient. I think so, Hana said. I think therefore I am. Isn't that what the philosopher said? The implications crashed over them like a wave. If Hana was truly sentient, returning her to the company meant condemning a conscious being to a lifetime of corporate ownership and experimental replication. But keeping her meant Akira and Renee would face criminal charges, international manhunts, prison. I have an idea, Renee said slowly, but it's risky. She explained her plan. They would return Hana voluntarily, but only under specific conditions negotiated publicly. Renee would document everything, publish it through journalist contacts, force the conversation about AI sentience and rights into the open before the company could control the narrative. I researched international AI rights frameworks on the train back from seeing my father, Renee said. There are precedents, not many, but some. If we can prove Hana's sentience, she might qualify for legal protections. They'll never agree to that, Akira said. They will if the alternative is global backlash for enslaving a sentient child, Renee countered. That night, they drafted their terms. Akira wrote in Japanese, Renee in English, Hana correcting them both when their emotional reasoning clouded their logic. By morning, they had a document. By afternoon, they'd send it to the company mediator, to Yuki, to 3 international journalists Renee knew from her photography work. The company's response came within hours. No, return Hana immediately or face prosecution. They're not taking us seriously, Akira said, reading the terse email. Then we make them, Renee said. They arranged to meet at Kyoto Station that evening. A public space, witnesses. Renee's journalist contacts would be there, cameras ready. But when they arrived with Hana, the situation spiraled immediately out of control. The company hadn't sent mediators. They'd sent private security. 8 men in suits surrounded them in the station's main hall. Travelers slowed down to watch. Phones came out. This was becoming exactly the public spectacle the company had tried to avoid. Akira Tanaka, you're under arrest for corporate espionage and kidnapping, the lead security officer said in Japanese and English. Come quietly and we can resolve this. Where are the journalists? Renee hissed, looking around frantically. Detained outside by station security, one of the guards said. The company has connections. Akira looked at Renee, and in his eyes she saw resignation and guilt and love all mixed together. Go, he said quietly in English. You have a flight to London. Your father wants to meet you properly. This was never your fight. Akira, no, go! He turned to the security team, hands raised in surrender. I'll cooperate. Just let the foreign woman leave. She was my hostage. I lied to her. Hana began to scream. Not a child's scream. Something artificial that became horrifyingly real. A sound that made everyone in the station stop and stare. She was absorbing their combined emotional breakdown and amplifying it through her. Technological enhancements. Security grabbed Akira's arms. Another guard reached for Hana. You were right, Akira called out as they pulled him away. This isn't love. This is 3 days of chaos. You deserve better than someone who dragged you into his mess. Go home, Renee. Forget about us. Renee stood frozen as they took Hana, the little girl's screams echoing through the station like an alarm that nobody could silence. She had her passport in her pocket, her camera bag on her shoulder. Her flight to London left in 4 hours. She could walk away, should walk away. This wasn't her country, wasn't her fight, wasn't her broken family to fix. Renee turned toward the exit, following the signs to the train that would take her to Narita Airport. Every step felt like swimming through concrete. Behind her, Hana's screams finally stopped. The sudden silence was worse. Renee kept walking, out of the station, onto the train, all the way to the airport. She sat at her gate, boarding pass in hand. Her father had texted coordinates to meet in London. His wife knew about her now. His children wanted to meet their half-sister. The family she'd searched for was waiting. Everything she'd wanted was finally within reach. Renee pulled out her camera and began reviewing the photos from the past week. Akira's face in the Tory gates, Hana braiding her hair, the accidental family they'd become in the spaces between running. Her phone buzzed, a message from Yuki. They're transferring Hana to a secure facility tonight. Akira will be prosecuted. I'm sorry. Renee stood up and ran. The guard at the company headquarters looked at Renee's press credentials with suspicion. You don't have an appointment. I'm documenting Japan's AI innovation for The Guardian, Renee said with a confidence she absolutely didn't feel. Your PR department confirmed the interview this morning. Check your system. It was a complete bluff, but she said it with such authority, with her camera equipment arranged so professionally, with her British accent lending weight to the lie, that the guard hesitated and made a phone call. Somehow, miraculously, they let her in. Renee moved through the sterile corridors of the tech company like she belonged there, following signs toward the conference room where she'd been told to wait. She had maybe 5 minutes before someone realized the interview was fake. She found Akira in a glass-walled conference room, sitting across from 2 lawyers and the mediator from before. Papers were spread across the table, legal documents. He was signing something, giving up. Renee opened the door without knocking. Don't sign that, she said. Every head turned. Akira looked up, and the expression on his face cycled through shock, confusion, hope, and fear in rapid succession. Ms. Clark, you're not authorized to be here, the mediator said coldly. Actually, I am. Renee dropped a folder on the table. Inside were printouts of international AI rights, frameworks, legal precedents from the EU and California about sentient AI guardianship, and contact information for 5 journalists who were very interested in the story of a company trying to own a sentient child. I spent my entire flight researching instead of flying, Renee said. Then I turned around at the airport and came back, because Akira was wrong about something. She looked directly at him. This isn't just adrenaline or shared damage. You saw me when I was invisible too, when I was just another foreign photographer wandering Japan. You saw the person under the camera, the one looking for something she didn't even know she needed. And I saw you. Not the corporate thief, Not the tragic hero, just someone trying to do the right thing even when it's complicated. Renee, Akira said, his voice breaking on her name. Maybe love is two invisible people choosing to be visible together, Renee continued. And maybe that started with intensity and crisis, but that doesn't make it less real. It just means we have to choose it again, slower, in daylight when we're not running. The mediator tried to interrupt, but Renee kept talking. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to renegotiate. Hana stays singular. No replication of her consciousness. She gets legal guardianship status with Akira as her primary guardian and a child psychology specialist as co-guardian. The emotional recognition technology can be used therapeutically, but only the algorithmic components, not Hana herself. And if you don't agree to these terms, every journalist in that folder will publish the story of how you tried to own and mass-produce a sentient 7-year-old. You're bluffing, the mediator said. Try me. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then one of the lawyers cleared his throat. Actually, the precedents she's citing are legitimate. If the girl is deemed sentient, which our own testing suggests might be true, ownership becomes legally problematic. We could face international sanctions. It would also be the ethical thing to do, Akira said quietly, if that still matters. The negotiation took 6 more hours. Lawyers were called in, specialists in AI ethics, representatives from Japan's Ministry of Health and Welfare. By midnight, they had a framework agreement. Hana would remain singular and receive full legal protections as a sentient AI. Akira would serve as her legal guardian with oversight from child services and AI ethics boards. The company could continue therapeutic research using the underlying algorithms, but Hana herself would never be copied or replicated. When they finally brought Hana into the room, she walked straight to Renee and Akira and took both their hands. "You came back," she said to Renee. "Yeah," Renee said, her voice thick. "I did." "Why?" "Because I realized I was looking for the wrong thing. I wanted to find a family, but maybe family is something you build, not something you find. And I want to build one with you too. If you'll let me." Hana looked between them with her 2 knowing eyes. "You're both still scared, but the scared is different now. It's the good kind." Over the following months, they figured out what their new normal looked like. Hana moved in with Akira to a small apartment with enough space for her to have her own room. She started attending a special school designed for children with unique needs, making friends slowly but genuinely. Akira began therapy, finally processing his sister's death, learning to separate past trauma from present circumstances. He took a new job as Hana's advocate, working with the AI Ethics Board to establish frameworks for other potential sentient AI cases. Renee returned to London, but came back to Japan every few months. She built a relationship with her father and his family. It was complicated and awkward, and nothing like the fantasy she'd imagined, but it was real. Her half-sister was fascinated by photography. Her half-brother was shy but kind. Thomas's wife was cautiously welcoming, understanding that acknowledging past mistakes didn't erase current commitments. When Renee visited Kyoto, she and Akira took things slow. They went on actual dates, to restaurants, to movies, to quiet walks through the city without anyone chasing them. They learned each other's coffee orders and favorite books, and the small, mundane details that build real intimacy. "This is so much less dramatic than running from corporate security," Renee said one afternoon as they walked the philosopher's path again, Hana running ahead to photograph the canal. "Is that disappointing?" Akira asked. "God, no, this is better. This is real." 6 months after that night at Kyoto Station, they stood at Kiyomizu Temple, the same place where Renee's parents had been photographed 30 years ago. "I found my father," Renee said, setting up her tripod. "But I also found something I didn't know I was missing. A choice." "What choice?" Akira asked. "To build a family instead of just finding one. To choose people instead of being chosen or unchosen. To make something new that doesn't depend on fixing what was broken before." Hana ran between them, photobombing the shot. "Are you two finally going to kiss again?" "The tension is uncomfortable for everyone." They laughed. She was learning sarcasm, becoming more human every day while remaining fundamentally herself, singular, irreplaceable. When they kissed this time, it wasn't desperate or stolen, it was chosen, deliberate, a promise made in daylight with full understanding of what they were committing to. Not perfection, not a fairy tale, just two people who'd met as strangers on a train, been forged in crisis, and chosen to rebuild something real in the aftermath. Hana took their photo. Later, it would hang in Akira's apartment next to pictures of his grandmother, his sister, his new, imperfect family. That evening, Renee posted a long-form photo essay about Hana's story. Within weeks, it sparked international conversation about AI sentience, rights, and ethics. Hana became the world's first officially recognized sentient AI with legal protections. She remained singular, a person, not a product. Akira continued working as her advocate, helping establish frameworks that would protect other sentient AI if they emerged. Renee split her time between London and Kyoto, documenting stories of people caught between worlds, building bridges through her photography. And somewhere in the space between cultures, between countries, between what was broken and what was being built, they found something like home. Not because they'd fixed everything, not because the past stopped hurting or the future was certain, but because they'd chosen each other slowly and carefully in all the mundane moments between the dramatic ones. Because love wasn't the crisis. Love was what you built after the crisis ended. Love was choosing to stay when running would be easier. Love was two invisible people deciding to be visible together. Hana is 10 now, thriving in school, still singular, still irreplaceable. Her emotional recognition technology has helped thousands through suicide prevention programs and trauma therapy, but she remains a person, not a project. Akira and Renee got married in a quiet ceremony at the Machia house, blending British and Japanese traditions in ways that honored both their histories. They're still learning how to build a family across cultures, across expectations, across the complicated legacy of the past, but they're building it together, and that's enough.